if I talk to someone about how I feel, they try to fix me. They tell me what to do. Oh, you should try this thing. Oh, let's talk about it over a couple of beers. There is not this emotional support that I want now, or that I wanted 15 years ago. And now I'm going through building what is a real emotional support and allowing men to feel less lonely, because that's kind of a big ingredient to suicide, is this loneliness and feeling like we can't get a way out of where we are.
Welcome back to the Adventure Reignition Podcast. Today I'm with Lex Reilly. How is it going, Lex?
Yeah, it's all right. Thanks.
I'm super excited for this podcast episode because you have a very interesting background and journey, and I love to dive into those journeys. So we're going to talk about your background as a soldier and how you connected to the wilderness. We're going to dive also deep into how you rebuild foundation after such an experience, and also the connection to nature and the wilderness that is beneficial for everybody, but especially for you and also for me. And we'll see if we can talk also about a bit of slowing down, purpose, and dreams. For the audience that doesn't know you too much, what would be the key elements of your past that the audience needs to know to understand who you are today?
Yeah. Thanks. So I grew up in a humble house in Australia. I mean, humble as in we weren't well off when I was growing up, and I was taught, maybe not consciously, but I was taught to be concerned about money. And I joined the army when I was young, 20. And that really shaped a lot of my identity and allowed for other parts of my identity to strengthen and bolster. I had a young family early on in the piece, so I was the sole provider for a family of 4 at the age of 20. And I went to Afghanistan in 2010, and that really affected me significantly. And coming back from that was very difficult. And then everything that I thought was who I was fell apart, and I went through kind of like a 10-year process of exploring and rebuilding myself to arrive where I am now.
Yeah, let's dive straight into that background about you being in the army. When I think about people going to the army, by the way, in Switzerland it's mandatory to do the army. I'm always wondering, what's the hardest? Is it being on the ground in Afghanistan for you, or is it coming back home? So what is something that no one tells you about coming back from war?
Yeah, so for example, some things at war were incredibly confronting. And I might be sharing too much detail here, but like children's brains and people being shot and being up close with that, and then also knowing that that's the consequence of where I am. That's what's happening in my reality, and that's what we're trying to meet each other with. Us and the Taliban, we're trying to neutralize each other, aka kill each other. Basically, that's it. And then I had some friends die, in my platoon, and my job was to pack up their clothing and put it into a box. And so there's these, and then we go on patrol afterwards. So a lot of things that generally don't happen in life, all crammed into 8.5 months. And then returning home I was really excited to come home. I was so excited. I was surprised that I lived, because there were some really difficult situations in Afghanistan. And then I get home and I couldn't sleep the first night, and I just realized, like, oh fuck, I don't feel good here. My body feels like it's burning with stress, and I'm afraid of things that don't make sense. And coming home was very difficult for me and very difficult for my family.
And is there a moment where you realized once you were back that you just couldn't keep living the way you were once you were back home? Was there a pivotal moment when you realized this is not working?
I had indicators of things not being right for a long time. And that was like a couple of days after being back from Afghanistan, and my child drops a toy in the lounge room, and then my whole body is kind of freezing on fire. That was an indicator of like, oh, this is rough. This is not making sense. I'm concerned of how I feel, but I managed with alcoholism and workaholism to kind of stuff that stuff down for a couple of years. And then I was just having really inescapable, intrusive thoughts of suicide. And I was exploring vividly and in detail how I would do that and who I would potentially kill on my way out. And that was for months. I was having those intrusive thoughts, and the idea of killing myself was becoming very pleasurable, like a sense of relief. Like if I did that, it would just make everything go away. And that was this kind of turning point, this realization of like, okay, I can't find a way to kill myself without my children suffering shame or challenge. I can't solve that. And that was the real thing for me when I actually read in a book about some soldiers from Vietnam, a war that Australia was in decades ago, maybe 50, 60 years ago, off the top of my head. I read a section in that book about a soldier with PTSD, and he was talking about killing himself. And he said, yeah, I couldn't let my family live with the shame if I committed suicide, so I'd have to kill them too. And when I read that, I'm like, oh, fuck, this is where my mind can go. This is where it is now, which is about me killing myself and killing other people at work. But his mind went there, therefore any mind can go there, therefore my mind can go there. And that was fucking terrifying to have that as like, oh, wow, okay, that is within the human psyche. I couldn't articulate things back then like I do now, right? But to realize that that was a possibility, that someone would think to kill their family, so that they didn't have to live with the shame of suicide. And then for me, the big thought was like, it's time to get myself to hospital. And that was terrifying. That was you could say like an everyday life ego death kind of thing, as well as some kind of mental breakdown, psychosis episode in some ways. But yeah, the big thing for me was this suicide chapter, and then getting myself to hospital and pleading for help.
I really appreciate you sharing your journey with that because, as you know, I lost my dad to suicide as well. And it's been definitely a very, very difficult part because I wasn't young per se, but I was 18, 19 when it happened. And it's definitely a lot of different feelings that you experience that I experienced at the time. And I think there was a lot of anger also included in my journey. When I thought about what happened with my dad, and it's only recently when I did my 10-day silent retreat that I really had a breakthrough where I embrace tolerance through the meditations for him, for what happened, for everything that really gave me a lot of peace. And it happened 15 years ago. I'm now 35. And it takes a long time to heal of those kind of things. And I have a question for you, for anybody who's in that situation that you were in, if you were in or my dad was in, what would you say to them, to those people who are experiencing a very dark moment like you did? Now, in retrospect, with the more like the step back attitude you have now, what would you say and how would you help them go through those dark moments? You know, how anybody can help somebody close to them who's experiencing something like the thoughts you had, and how can somebody support those people? Because I think it's really important to understand that side as well, because a lot of people doesn't know how to react if a friend comes to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an interesting question. And I have had it's possibly termed a miracle, but I've had a very clear encounter with God, and that has yeah, that's really changed my life, and also changed my level of trust. And I think that, you know, what I realize now around suicide, for example, is for me to just trust God in that, God's plan, God's will. I also know where we go when we die. And that has brought a lot of peace to me as well. And in relation to my father, who passed away 5 years ago from cancer, to know that, you know, where he's heading or where he's headed. I relate with death differently now in the last several months, right? But my thought on the practicalities of supporting someone who's at that edge of suicide, and I think about the support that I needed versus the support that I got, and I was taken care of in hospital for several weeks, and that was really beneficial. And then I went on to, you know, medication trials, and there was this own challenges with that, like erectile dysfunction for years. Or in the morning on one medication, I would want to kill myself every morning, and by the afternoon, I was so happy. And that was a kind of daily cycle for me on this medication. And what I'm getting at there is that there is like complications to supporting someone that's at that edge. And part of the process is like this pharmaceutical, psychological element. But I think I had just felt like I lost so much hope in my life, and I'd lost um, who I being safe with myself. And I think like to actually practically support someone, because I think men talk a lot of shit as well. And this is what I realize now, like with how I prefer to articulate things and coming in touch with my own emotions and realizing, how emotionally sensitive I am. I'm still a very strong man. But I realize a pattern, at least in the Australian culture. If I talk to someone about how I feel, they try to fix me. They tell me what to do. Oh, you should try this thing. Oh, let's talk about it over a couple of beers. And there is not this emotional support that I want now, or that I wanted 15 years ago. And now I'm going through building what is a real emotional support, and allowing men to feel less lonely, because that's kind of a big ingredient to suicide, is this loneliness and feeling like we can't get a way out of where we are. But I think one of the actual ways to support someone is like, hey, life has kind of got wedged. It can get unwedged, but that needs some genuine practical support, as well as a break from the pressure of I just doing stuff like fucking washing clothing, cooking. That stuff for me was overwhelming, not just when I wanted to commit suicide, but afterwards. For years, when I was on these medication trials, I couldn't manage my dishwasher, let alone my life. And so I think that it's, and I'm talking to a lot of men now. I'm really fortunate to do that. But it's really common for guys to have maybe tied a noose or have had a pistol in their mouth, right? A lot of guys go to the edge and they go there alone, and there isn't an adequate space to kind of talk about it. And I think a part of the reason is that when we talk about it and we open up and we're so delicate and so vulnerable, we meet it with this emotionally immature response of, like I said, let's talk about it over some beers. Or maybe a guy has heartbreak from a relationship separation, and the advice he gets from a friend is there's plenty of fish in the sea, or some other stupid saying that you might use in Switzerland or other parts of Europe. Like, that's not emotionally helping someone. That's actually just scaring their emotions away. So I think I really think the best way to help someone who's talking about suicide is to help yourself before your mates get there, and to start to take care of your own emotions like a beautiful, delicate child, and to start to understand how to communicate softly within yourself, and to understand also the love of self-discipline, and to really be proactive within this before suicide happens within your network, or is threatening within your network, because personally it's a community event. A suicide is a community event. It's a family event. And when your father killed himself, there comes his emotion and suffering onto you, and you inherit that. And maybe some of his friends around him inherited that to a different degree. But I think that to really help each other when this stuff comes up, is the help is way better way before, and that is to actually learn how to communicate effectively as men with our emotions, and to stop trying to fix each other like we're a building project when we're having a breakdown, you know. Like, Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Quick break from the podcast. I really hope you have as much fun as I do. First, thank you for being here. And if you enjoy it, please give it a follow and share this with a friend because it really helps a lot. Now, if you are a multi-passionate creator, an adventurer, or a visionary that feel called to express themselves fully, I'm opening few spots for my brand new one-on-one coaching that helps you build a brands that feel like you and attract aligned opportunities without copying trends, faking it, or just waiting for clarity to arrive. So whether you are still figuring out your voice or want to have more confidence expressing your story, we will co-create your personal brand and content with a sustainable rhythm that you can actually follow. Spots are limited, so follow me on Instagram and DM me POD to see if this is a great fit. All right, back to the podcast.
I was carefully listening to you because I I love your insight. And what I would add based on my experience and something I really need to work harder on myself on that sometimes, especially with the people close to me, is like you said, it's not fixing people. It's not trying to find a solution. It's not to tell them what to do, which honestly I do quite often, but I realized afterwards. And I think the key here, and I'll let you tell me what you think about that in a second, for me is to actually listen to the people close to you and just hear and listen actively what they say without judging, without telling them what to do, and just being kind of like the supporter that is here. And I think that's what I believe is like people have a big desire to feel heard and seen. And the only way to do that is just to ask questions and listen and not telling what to do. And that's hard because our mind is programmed, like you say, by culture to fix, do, and instead of just listening. So I'd love to have, before we move into the next part of like rebuilding from those situations, what's your take on listening? Because communication is pretty. You talk a lot about communication, and I want to know exactly what type of communication you mean by man needs to communicate more.
Yeah, thank you. That's really valid as well. Can you ask the start of that question again?
Yeah, of course. Let's say we both are in one of those conversation, and you said man needs to express their emotion better, communicate better, and I hear what you said, and I have a hint of what it means because I've been doing a lot of work, and especially after a silent retreat, I know exactly what it means.
Yeah.
But for somebody who doesn't know, how does it look? And let's try to make it practical, to be in touch with your emotion and have this communication to help that person maybe in a dark place.
Yeah. So what's real for me on this topic right now, right, is if in a really practical sense, if someone is kind of bringing you or your friend or whoever, if they're bringing you an emotion, it's to look at that as like something really delicate and to hold that like with curiosity, like you're looking at a new baby and you don't tell a new baby how the world is because it doesn't need to know. You don't fix it because it's perfect. If it's crying, you just hold it. That's all. And maybe there is a bit of a process when it's crying to check some fundamental things like milk or if it needs to be burped. And I think that is maybe relevant to when men are opening up, is like, well, can I support you in your daily life somehow? Does it take some pressure off you if I just cook food for your house for 3 days? And then to ask a question, not like, are you good? Because if every time someone's asked me in the past, am I good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. But it was a load of shit. But, more question like, can I support you? Or very specifically, because if someone's overwhelmed, maybe they can't think about how they can receive support. Like, would it support you if I cooked you food for 3 days? Yes. Would it support you if I drove you around for 3 days so you don't have to think about that? Yes. Can I clean your house? Yes. Just simple things like that, because the overwhelm can build and build and build, and then it's like people can't see how they can receive help, and it's difficult for me even now, with as much focus as I've given on discovering who I am, to know how to articulate help, because it can be difficult for me to articulate clearly the assistance I can benefit from. But with the emotional stuff, like all of these sayings, like if someone's going through heartbreak and there's plenty of fish in the sea, or you'll get over her when you have your next woman, or whatever, or time heals all wounds, all of these sayings, it's not an authentic communication. It's not real in the moment. It's something just coming from my head. And a lot of what I believe is, because I've learned to communicate so openly and vulnerably myself, I get to see these reactions a lot. And a lot of the reason why men try to give me advice or fix my emotions is because they feel uncomfortable with their own emotions. And that is often then they can't meet me emotionally further than they've met themselves. And so, like, for me personally, I do feel quite lonely even now on a daily basis, because of the gifts that I've had in my spiritual journey and my emotional journey with looking at all of these things, is that I've really explored myself, and there is a limited amount of people that are able to actually support the depth of me altogether. But for men to just be gentle and present with each other's emotions is a really powerful first step, because some of these emotions are coming from such a deep place inside us that words don't help. Solving it doesn't help. It's like, just what practical help can that person be provided?
Yeah, it's so good. It's really, I really appreciate you just diving deeper into that topic, because I'm sure that if I'm sure a lot of people have some of their loved ones or close friends having tough situations, and sometimes we don't know exactly how to communicate. We know communication is important, and you gave us a lot of examples. And that really stick to my mind is just like asking the other person how we can support them in just let them say. And if they don't know, maybe like you said, suggestions like, can I clean your house? Does it help? Yes, no. And I think it's a very delicate process, like you said, like a baby. But I really love that analogy, and the idea of like being proactive with the help and the support for somebody who's maybe in a very dark moment. And I really appreciate, and I'm really grateful, and I really want to say is thank you already now for being so open about that. And I just want to switch gear a little bit and move on because there's so many topics we can cover. But I really want to thank you first for that moment that I think is really important. But now let's move on a little bit to your story, and it's just like a small transition to what we just talked. So now you've been starting to rebuild yourself up from coming back from war and heal yourself. And I want to know, like, what are some of the small things that help you later down the road to feel more at peace and rebuild and become more like, I don't know if it's the right word, but yourself, or just like a normal person again?
What are the small things that helped? Yeah. I started when I was ready. It was actually maybe a bit premature, but I started to volunteer in the Surf Life Saving Club so that I was socially interacting with people, and also I had a level of responsibility to rescue people from the surf. And that was really positive for me because it was um, when we're at the beach, there was no alcohol, and there was a level of duty, and that called some positive elements out of myself. Other things, I had tried meditation, right? But I could only meditate for like 3 minutes because it just was so uncomfortable to be with myself. And this is 2018. I was going through this, 2017, where I couldn't be with myself for longer than 3 minutes, and it's like I'm just going to do a 3-minute meditation. I just need to do something. This little kind of like, you could call it pathetic. You could call a 3-minute meditation pathetic, but my life was quite pathetic in some ways anyway, right? And I was just trying these little things to live a better life, and looking at these alternate ways to be okay within myself. But the surf club was also outdoors, and it was physically active. So that was another powerful positive as well. And there was also an element of competition there, because that was hard for me to go from being quite an elite soldier to a drunkard, overweight, struggling, marijuana smoking veteran.
And coming from all your background, and now you're starting to find this sense of service that I see that plays a big role for you. And I think a lot of people, like, when we bring in service, we think that maybe we feel important, we feel we're helping other than people. And for me, it always helps when I do something for somebody else.
Mm.
But I have a question that popped up in my mind listening to your stories. Based on everything that you've been through and who you are today, how would you define true strength today?
Trust. Yeah, I think true strength is trust. There's more to it maybe than that, but that was the first thing that came to my mind, is like just trusting in life, trusting in God, trusting in your soul. And that then is like, well, I'm just presented opportunities for me to be more of who I am. I was fighting myself for a long time. I used to hate myself, right? when I was drinking alcohol or I was domestically violent. I hated myself. And I had this real you versus you mentality. And I've recently written an ebook, and I talk about the dangers of, you versus you, or I've heard you talk about hustle and the grind and the dangers of that, of always pushing. But the battle within the self is not meant to be a battle, right? It's like I can be my own best friend if I approach myself lovingly and openly. But I think that a lot of strength is certainly upheld by trust.
Yeah, ask the question because I love both sides of the spectrum, which are trusting yourself, being kind with yourself, having a good self-talk, but also I love in the other side pushing myself and doing things that are uncomfortable. And when I sometimes ask the question in a podcast with guests or even to myself, I'm having a hard time. Like there are moments where I'm like in pushing myself a lot and maybe too much, and there are some times where I feel like I'm too kind to myself. Like I'm living in a moment. I think after after the 10 days silent retreat, I've been a bit too kind to myself that I become lazy at some point. So what's your take on that? How do you manage, like, okay, sometimes you need to push yourself to get uncomfortable, to reconnect to yourself, but also be kind at the same time and loving and accepting and trusting the process, trusting what's going on at the moment, and maybe trying to see the bigger picture that will show up at some point?
Yeah, really, really great question. I had my first boxing fight maybe 6 weeks ago. And that was awesome, right? 38 years old, had my first fight. Another guy, 90 kilos. He was an ex-commando, so he's very tough. And I had my training program before the fight, and I didn't wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. every morning. I woke up when the sun told me to wake up, and I made sure I gave myself enough sleep. And I went to training most of the time. I didn't want to go to training. I didn't want to go to boxing because it was uncomfortable and difficult. But I knew, like, hey, I'm going to go into a small square with someone and we're going to try to punch each other as hard as we can. And we both want to punch each other so hard that the other person falls on the floor because their brain has, like, put them to sleep. So I'm going to go to training even when I don't want to. However, I'm going to make sure that I listen to my body, and I also meditate, and I take the time to listen to my body, because I don't want to push myself too far, because I've abused myself like that in the past, trying to push. And the thing for me with navigating that was, I just kind of trust is like, I'm doing the work to get into the boxing ring to fight well. If I get knocked out or if I win, that's kind of just a part of what's happening here. I can't control that so much. But I'm doing the work to be competitive. But I'm not hating myself to do it. I do it because I love myself and I want the goal. And I want to step into the ring proud of my efforts. But in the past, a lot of my goals were to prove myself, because the goals were driven from an emptiness within my identity. Whereas for the boxing, it was like, I wanted to feel the energy of being a warrior in that environment. I wanted to meet the discipline and the focus for fitting to training for 2 months or longer before the fight. And I want to do it because I fucking love myself and I want to have fun and I want to be a badass motherfucker and get in there and punch someone who's trying to punch me.
Yeah, I understand the image. I have the same. I mean, I'm pretty competitive. I played football for more than 20 years. So every time I would go on the field, it's just to win. But you wouldn't. But once it's over, for me, it's over. It's like behind. You know, I'm just gentle. If I lost, I lost. If I won, I won. And what I hear from you is just a key word that I think is really important here to highlight is acceptance of what it is, of the result, of the failure, of what it is. And that's the bridge between my questions, between being kind with yourself, but also like pushing and giving your best. And if it comes from a perspective that there is like a square where you're gonna get in and play, and then once you get out, you accept what happened there, you give your best, and that's fine. And I think that's an interesting insight you gave here, between the constantly high achieving, pushing side of us we can have, and also the self acceptance and getting out of this mindset of just being in acceptance or just being too kind with ourselves. That's why I call myself the adventurous hermit, because I have a very big side of me that just want to stay in comfort all the time. But at the same time, I know it's a poison. So that's why I go on adventures like you do as well, like going into the cold or just like on my bike or traveling or whatever funny little adventure I can find. And coming to that topic a bit of adventure and more or less nature, I want to have your input on that. I think you said in one of your posts that for you, wilderness is your medicine. And I'm curious to know what was one of the most healing thing you learned from the wild and nature.
Yeah, maybe the most healing things that I've learned from nature has been this idea of being an individual doesn't really fit, like with some of the experiences I've had in nature, I've really been able to feel oneness and have these very powerful experiences of starting to see nature as an extension of myself. And I'm video editing at the moment for my YouTube channel, and I'm doing stuff from the archives from what I did in 2018 in New Zealand, where I went into the mountains after my mountaineering course, and I said to the instructor, I don't want to see someone for a week. Where do I go? And he showed me on the map where to go to, no one will be there that time of year. And so I didn't see another person for 6 or 7 days, and there wasn't a track there. There was no destination. There was nothing kind of like that. It was just this space for me to explore nature and myself as it unfolded. But I was able to feel a lot emotionally, but also when I was crossing this glacier, maybe Iraqi Mount Cook in New Zealand, I was crossing a glacier there for like 6 to 7 hours, and that was very difficult, like exceptionally difficult. That was very dangerous, and the whole time it was quite high risk, and so I had a lot of time in this environment where I might die if I make a mistake, to just be with my mistakes of the past and my inner voice, and to just hear all of the conversations I've had in the last years coming up and replaying within myself. And I realized that those memories and conversations with other people had become a part of me. And then I really started to explore this idea of like, I'm not alone because everyone has become me. And like just looking at my hand and just remembering like, the things that my hand has done, just strange thoughts like that, that there's no chance of really having on a daily basis at home when I'm quite busy, but just thinking about, how my hand has made food for my children, or how it's, held my children's own hand or tied their shoelaces, or, how this hand has also held weapons in Afghanistan. Just kind of like things like that, and really developing the sense of the idea of energy flowing around the planet and coming through us, and people's belief systems and characteristics coming through us as well.
And what would you say are the biggest benefits of spending time in nature and wilderness that you have observed for yourself and also for the groups you bring in nature? What would you say are the biggest benefits for most people?
Yeah, I think for the people that I take out in nature, it gets to expand their reality and the way they see themselves. So they get to remember that they can feel gratitude for water, right? Most of us don't think about water on a daily basis, but then when it maybe takes you 3 hours to collect it and boil it and treat it or whatever, you can just appreciate it a bit more. And as for myself, can you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, what are the benefits of spending time in nature for you and most people?
Yeah, it just really cleans my mind, because I can feel like I can be sensitive to taking on other people's stuff, their thoughts or their busyness or their attitude, their beliefs. And having time in nature for me is time with Mother Earth, who is like our mother in a very deep way, and it just gets to clean me. I get to see more of who I am and more of who she is and more of life when I haven't spoken to someone for 3 days and I'm just out bush watching a fire, and really being present with that and slowing down. And maybe I play with my shoelace for an hour, right? Like a kid.
I love that spirit. To be honest, I asked the question because sometimes I'm too much in my head and I wonder what are the benefits, but I can totally relate what you said. For me, it's like cleaning my mind, um, getting back the energy, and sometimes also having great conversation with friends when we go on hikes in the mountains. So I love that. And I love the simplicity of being in nature, whether I'm doing that on a hike for a few days or on my bike as well. It's just like you take a tent, you cook, you enjoy nature, you have a river for the water, and just having those raw moments that I think fuel my perspective on feeling connected to the human species as a whole, to, to the mother nature as a whole as well. And that's how I felt after coming back for a year of travel. I remember catching myself like not even wanting to kill a fly at home. So I think that's the kind of benefit that you can have in nature. And it was really, really, really beautiful to hear you say that and reflect on that. I have a few more questions because we're coming to the end of the podcast, but I really want to ask one specific question about, based on everything you have been through, based on all the learnings and the lesson you've learned along your path and journey and your personal story, what do you think you are here for? What is the things you do that bring purpose for you in your life based on everything you have been through today?
Yeah, a really important thing I'm here for is to help people re-relate with Mother Earth and themselves. and specifically like supporting men to reconnect with being masculine, because it's very common to lose our way with that. With, you know, how you mentioned you can get caught up with the poison of comfort. It's really common for us to get lazy as men and to kind of lose our masculine identity. And then especially with some of the common day messaging around men, and mostly men are becoming more feminine. We're spending so much time thinking, we're not doing physical labor, we're not aggressive, we get judged for being aggressive. Like there's an interesting identity crisis for men, and I'm going through the process of supporting men to reclaim their own masculine identity, which is then supporting their families, right? Because their female partners can't be feminine. If the man doesn't trust himself, she can't trust him. It's just an intelligence that's in her body, like a subconscious. And most men are taught to not trust who they are. We're all taught to think a lot. We're taught to focus on external goals of like a career or a watch or a car, as opposed to connecting to our own body and desires and intuition. You know, I've heard you use the term intuition, and you've had this silent retreat as well, which I think would be very magical for your mind and understanding a deeper intelligence. But I was very lost in my life within my own identity, and I had a lot of emptiness in who I was I was trying to fill, right? Trying to prove that I was enough, or trying to avoid feeling lonely by seeking women or alcohol or whatever. But the main thing for me now is to get men into the bush or the forest or wherever on the planet, and to start to have real conversations, and to start to support men to take command of their own life.
And one question that came in mind is, what does it mean to be a man today?
Yeah, I can't answer that, because all I know is that I'm a man. I don't know when I became a man. It wasn't when I went to war. It wasn't when I got married. It wasn't when I had kids. I don't know when I became a man, because I think that we have lost a lot of our tradition with supporting boys to become men. And the confusion there is maybe turning 18 or casting your first vote or a job or getting a woman pregnant or whatever. That doesn't make anyone a man. And then there is like some romantic ideas of, yeah, I became a man when whatever, I don't know. But for me, like the fundamental of to be a man is to protect and provide, and to be understanding some of these primal masculine identities, and also some of these spiritual masculine concepts. But I'm not totally sure on when someone transitions from a boy to be a man, but I'll also be clear, because I think there's a lot of ambiguity with it, like this idea of what is a woman. A man is someone that is born a male, and at some point in time in their life they transition into manhood, and I think manhood is an ever expanding process. But I don't think someone can't just get a gender change and then decide that they're a man. That doesn't work in my world. But I think manhood is this kind of never-ending arena of growth. But there are certain demands within being a man to relate with our power is to, you know, be at our edge or to have a relationship with fear and courage. Staying on the couch and smoking marijuana, I was not expressing my masculinity when I was doing that, right? I was avoiding some difficult things. So I wasn't being in my power as a man.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And yeah, thank you for sharing those thoughts, because I'm always wondering, what does it mean to be a man in this never changing world with powerful messages on you should be this way, you should provide, you should do this. So yeah, very great, great insight. Thank you for that. I have two more questions, but before that, I just want to take a moment, Lex, to acknowledge you for who you are, for your journey, and everything you shared here. I'm really grateful that you've been so open about your journey from a soldier to now being involved with men in nature specifically, and also answering my questions that weren't maybe really comfortable, especially about dark thoughts. Um, I know it's not easy to answer those questions because I lived something similar with my dad, and I just wanted to have the answer. And I think you just gave powerful space for people to support each other in very tough moments instead of reacting the automatic way we used to, and I'm also used to. So I take it for myself as well. And I just want to say thank you for your wisdom, for your truth, and everything you just shared today on the podcast. Where anybody can find more about you online, so that they can just check out your stuff, what you do, and what specifically do you do with people in the wild as well?
Thank you. So the website is a good start because that has my YouTube and my Instagram on that, and that's where I'm the most active. The website is www.australian dash, or maybe you call it minus, viking.com. And the YouTube is something like Australian Viking, and the same the Instagram. But the website's a good place to start. And what I do in the wilderness is when I take people out, right? So I don't take people hiking. I don't like to go on expedition. I really like to just have the destination as the moment, and to support people to arrive at the moment. And I have a focus on like legitimately surviving. So actually, depending on the results of fishing or getting a fire going, whether it's like I'll be doing some training in Austria in September. And the main kind of thing is to teach men and women wilderness skills, old skills that kind of 100 years ago everyone knew, 500 years ago everyone knew, right? But they're getting forgotten, and I like to teach them, and I like to just have real conversations while we're doing it, and not just to teach it so it's knowledge, but to actually depend on that as a result. So like with what I do in the Arctic, in 2026, in the European summer, I want to take 10 men. I have a small Viking boat, basically 105 years old. I want to take 10 men on 3 of those boats, and we'll go on the Arctic coast, and I'll teach them how to sail a square Viking ship and how to row. And then we'll go out and survive off the coast with what we catch from fish and seaweed and the water we get from the mountains. So it's a real adventure, and sometimes uncomfortable things happen there, but like, yeah, we really need to catch fish, or maybe we don't eat for 2 days.
Awesome. That's back to the roots. I will put all the links below so people can get to your website, also your Instagram, and just follow you online if they're interested in that. I have two more questions. What is one uncomfortable truth you've come to accept about yourself and that now you live by?
So I've had this very clear interaction with God, and what my personal interaction with God contradicts the main messages in these modern day religions. And the way that I see these kind of general religious messages is you will worship our God, our way, or you'll go to our hell. That's kind of, I know they say a lot of other things, but for me, they seem to drive this wedge in between divine and some kind of exclusive access, or I need to be a certain way. But this relationship that I had with God when he spoke to me, he took my hand, absolutely wild. But I just have absolute trust in God now, and I know that he loves me no matter what, and I can spit in God's face and he will love me because he is my utterly divine Father. I don't need to worship him because he's utterly divine. It's like this, and I think I'm learning how to talk about this because it's very different to how the religions talk about God. But for me now, like, I have trust in God and I can meet him in my heart, and he doesn't need me to worship him. All is God's will, and I can totally trust God, but I don't need to go to a church or follow someone else's pathway to have God in my life.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing this. I have one more question to ask you to end the podcast. Adventure, what does it mean to you?
Adventure means sweaty forearms, itchy legs, insects, cold Arctic, frozen nose, not knowing when I'll eat next, feeling a bit frustrated with someone else in my team or myself, feeling excited, not knowing like when we'll sleep, not just this whole kind of not knowing thing, but having the freedom to go with what presents itself in that moment as opposed to being fixed. We have to be at this point. We have to be at the night location we have to be, or whatever. It's the actual free exploration of everything that presents itself in a certain level of unknown. That's the adventure part of it. It's like, it's unknown. It can be messy. Maybe someone shits themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, what a good way to end the podcast. That was Lex Reilly, if I pronounce it well. Thank you so much for everything you shared today. I just want to say how grateful I am to have those conversations, and especially this one with you. And yeah, thank you so much, Lex.
Yeah, thanks, Blaze. It was really fun. Really fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye.